They say love is supposed to feel like coming home, but what they don't tell you is that sometimes coming home feels like dying. Every breath burns, every heartbeat splits you open, and the closer you get to the one you're meant to love, the more it destroys you from the inside out. My name is Elena Moretti, and I'm being killed by a bond I never asked for. This is the story of how love became my poison, and how the vampire king who broke me had to learn that some things, once shattered, require more than regret to repair. This is about the pain that comes before healing, the agony that precedes transformation, and the terrible, beautiful truth that real love doesn't just happen to you. It demands everything you are and asks if you're brave enough to give it. The first time I felt it, I thought I was having a heart attack. I was 21, standing in the Metropolitan Gallery where I just started as an assistant curator. It was the opening night of our Vampire Integration exhibit, an ambitious collection celebrating the 5-year anniversary of the revelation, when vampires had stepped out of the shadows and into society. I was adjusting a placard near a 15th century portrait when the doors opened, and he walked in. Dracius Thorn, the vampire king of the Southern Territories. I'd seen his face in newspapers, on television, always commanding and cold. But seeing him in person was different. He moved like darkness given form, silver white hair pulled back from a face too beautiful to be real, crimson eyes scanning the room with the assessment of a predator. And the moment those eyes passed over me, not even landing, just passing by like I was part of the furniture, my chest exploded in pain. It felt like someone had reached into my ribcage and set fire to my heart. I gasped, clutching the edge of the display case, my vision swimming. The burning spread through my veins like acid, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but try not to scream. My supervisor's hand on my shoulder made me flinch. The Vampire King had already moved on, disappearing into the crowd of donors and dignitaries. And as quickly as the pain had come, it faded to a dull, throbbing ache. I whispered that I was fine, just anxiety, just crowds. But I knew it wasn't anxiety. Because for the rest of that evening, I tracked him without meaning to. Every time he moved closer, the pain intensified. Every time he left a room I was in, I could finally breathe again. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was fear, or stress, or some weird panic disorder triggered by proximity to apex predators. I told myself that for 5 years. 5 years of learning to avoid him. 5 years of checking guest lists and finding excuses to leave events early. 5 years of this inexplicable, agonizing pain that doctors couldn't explain and medications couldn't touch. They said it was psychosomatic. They promised it was all in my head. But I knew my body. I knew pain. And this was real. I started keeping a journal, documenting every episode. The pattern was undeniable. Every single instance of chest pain, burning sensations, or breathless agony coincided with one thing: Dracius Thorn's presence within a 100-foot radius. But I never told the doctors about the vampire connection. In the integration art world, admitting that vampire proximity triggered panic would mark me as prejudiced, damage my career, make me unemployable. So I suffered in silence. And as the years passed, something changed. The safe distance grew smaller. At 21, I could tolerate being in the same building if we were on different floors. By 24, I needed to be in different wings. By 26, even 50 feet was too close. I was getting worse, deteriorating, though I didn't understand why. I became an expert at avoidance. I could sense when he was near before the pain even started, some primitive part of me that recognized danger. Fortunately, Dracius spent most of those years traveling for political duties across the Southern Territories, only appearing in New Orleans occasionally. But 6 months ago, he returned permanently to establish his permanent court here, and suddenly, avoidance became nearly impossible. My brother Jatin, who'd started researching vampire-human interactions after noticing my patterns, was the only one who questioned whether it might be something other than fear. But neither of us could imagine what. By the time I turned 26, I'd built a careful, small life, working at a gallery that rarely hosted vampire dignitaries. I thought I was managing. Then, Marcus Sterling, the gallery owner, burst into my office with terrible news, disguised as celebration. "We're hosting the Southern Territory's annual arts gala. The Thorne Foundation chose us." My coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Every vampire lord in the southern United States will be here. When?" I managed to ask. 3 weeks. I told him I couldn't, that I had a medical condition. Marcus studied me with shrewd assessment. "This is about the vampire king, isn't it? You've been avoiding him for years." "It's not fear," I finally exploded. "Every time I'm near him, I feel like I'm dying, actual physical pain, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's real." The silence that followed was heavy with pity. Marcus told me to take a personal day for the gala, but we both knew what it meant for my career. The night of the gala, I stayed home. Around 9 p.m., a photo came through that made my heart stop. Dracius Thorne, standing in front of one of my curated pieces, a modern painting exploring the loneliness of immortality. He was staring at it with an expression I'd never seen before. Devastated. Before I could process it, Marcus called. "Lady Ashford wants to purchase the entire integration series, 60 pieces. But she'll only discuss terms with the curator. I need you here." 1 hour, he promised. $500,000 that would secure the gallery's future. I closed my eyes. Surely I could survive 1 hour. I told him I was on my way. I was wrong about surviving. I made it through security, through the back entrance, almost to Marcus's office where Lady Ashford was waiting. The pain was there, a steady burn that told me Dracius was somewhere in the building, but it was manageable. Then he turned the corner. We were alone in the back hallway, 10 feet of empty space between us. Our eyes met. And the world ended. The pain didn't build gradually this time. It detonated like a bomb in my chest, so intense that I couldn't even scream. My legs gave out. I hit the marble floor hard, and all I could feel was burning, 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 like every cell in my body was tearing itself apart. Through the haze of agony, I saw him freeze. Those crimson eyes went wide with horror. He whispered my name. Elena. He knew my name. How did he know my name? I gasped for him to stay away, but he was already moving toward me, and each step made it worse. A female voice cut through the chaos. "Stop! Dracius, get back! You're killing her!" Suddenly he was gone, and I could breathe again. The pain receded to merely unbearable. I gasped for air, tears streaming down my face, my whole body shaking. A woman knelt beside me, beautiful, ageless, with warm amber eyes. "My name is Mira. I'm a healer. Can you tell me what you're feeling?" "Burns," I managed. "Everything burns when he's near." Her expression shifted to something grave. She looked at Dracius, who stood frozen at the end of the hallway, his face devastated. "How long?" Mira asked him sharply. 5 years, he answered, his voice cracking. 5 years since I... "You fool," Mira breathed. With her help, I got to my feet. She guided me to Marcus's office, cleared the room with a glare that brooked no argument, and had me sit down. She placed her hands on either side of my face, her eyes glowing faintly. "Oh, child," she whispered after a moment. "Oh, no." "What?" I demanded. "What's wrong with me?" "Elena, do you know what a mate bond is?" I'd heard the term. Vampire lore about fated mates, souls that called to each other, partnerships that lasted centuries. "I'm not a vampire," I said, "and I'm definitely not bonded to anyone." "But you were meant to be," Mira said quietly. 5 years ago, the mate bond began to form between you and Dracius Thorne. It's rare, happens in maybe 1 in 10,000 vampires. The connection forms based on soul resonance. When it happens with a human, it's even more powerful. My mind reeled. That's not possible. I didn't feel anything 5 years ago except pain. Because he severed his side of the bond before it could fully form. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. He what? Dracius performed a ritual to cut his connection to you. It took him 3 days to gather what he needed and perform it. But by then, the bond had already begun to root in you. Cutting his side didn't destroy yours, it just broke it, left it incomplete and dying. I felt cold all over. What does that mean? It means you're suffering from bond rejection syndrome. Your soul has been trying to complete a connection that can't be completed. Every time you're near Dracius, your bond recognizes its other half and tries desperately to reach him. But his side is severed, so yours just burns. It's been poisoning you for 5 years. And as your bond deteriorates, the safe distance shrinks. What used to be manageable at 50 feet becomes fatal at 10. How long do I have? I asked. Maybe 6 weeks, she said gently. The pain will get worse. The episodes more frequent. Eventually, your heart will just stop. I couldn't process it. 5 years of suffering because some vampire king decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience? Can it be fixed? There are 3 options, Mira said. 1. Stay away from Dracius. You'll live maybe 3 months instead of 6 weeks, but in constant pain. 2. We perform a ritual to destroy your side of the bond. Given how deteriorated your bond is, you'd have maybe a 10% survival rate. And if you survive, you'll never be able to form another mate bond. 3. Complete the bond. If Dracius restores his side and you accept him fully, the connection will heal. You'll be bonded for life, which for you would mean living several centuries. I laughed bitterly. So my options are die slowly, probably die quickly, or bond myself for centuries to a man who literally cut me out of his soul 5 years ago? You're right, a deep voice said from the doorway. Dracius stood there, and even through my fury, I felt the pain spike. You're absolutely right, Elena, he continued, his voice raw. I did this. I saw you 5 years ago, felt the bond beginning to form, and I was terrified. So I began the ritual to sever it. I thought I was protecting both of us. You thought wrong, I spat. I know. He took 1 step into the room, and I gasped as the burning intensified. He immediately stepped back, and I saw his hands tremble. I've known for 6 months. Mira discovered what was happening. I've spent every day since trying to find another way to save you. But there isn't one. The only cure is for me to restore the bond and for you to accept it. And what if I don't? What if I'd rather die than spend eternity with someone who rejected me? Then I'll have to live with being your murderer, he said quietly. And believe me, Elena, that's a punishment worse than any you could imagine. Mira drove me home that night. He's been trying to find you a cure, she said, contacted healers across the world, ancient vampires, witches, spent a fortune, all to avoid forcing you into this choice. How noble, I said flatly, trying to fix a problem he created. She handed me a card with her number. Think about it, but don't think too long. Every day you wait, the bond gets weaker. I called Jatin. Jay, I need you. He arrived 20 minutes later, and I told him everything. So this vampire king gave you a death sentence, and now you're supposed to forgive him and bond with him for life, he finally said. Or die in 6 weeks. Elena, this is insane. Mira's been searching for 6 months. If there was another way, they would have found it. Jatin ran his hands through his hair. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to refuse out of spite. But choosing death out of spite seems stupid. It's not stupid. It's self-determination. But is it really my life if I'm dying anyway? I leaned back against the couch. And there's something else, Jay. For 5 years I've had dreams, always the same. Crimson eyes in darkness, a voice calling my name, overwhelming longing. I thought they were nightmares, But what if they weren't? What if some part of me has been reaching for him all along? Jatin was quiet. Elena, that doesn't mean you owe him anything. I know, but it means maybe part of me wants this. And I don't know if that's my soul or just cosmic manipulation. When it comes to fate and supernatural bonds, is there really free will? He didn't have an answer. Neither did I. 2 days later, I asked Mira to arrange a meeting with Dracius, somewhere I could handle the pain long enough to talk. We met at sunset on the banks of the Mississippi River. Mira had given me something called bond suppressant, but warned me it only works with specialized ritual magic, not for regular use. It would dull the pain for an hour. Dracius was already there, standing at the water's edge. Even with the suppressant, I felt the pull when he turned. Not just pain this time, something that felt like recognition. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I came for answers, not forgiveness. He gestured to a bench. We sat on opposite ends. Tell me why, I said. And don't give me the simple version. I want the truth. He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. I was made vampire in 1224, turned against my will by a vampire lord who thought I'd make a useful soldier. I was 19 years old. The bond between me and my human wife, my pregnant wife, snapped the moment I died. I felt her soul rip away from mine. I hadn't expected that. I went back to her after the transformation, thinking maybe we could still have a life. But when she looked at me, all she saw was the creature that killed her husband. She died in childbirth a month later, believing I was dead. My child died with her. I'm sorry, I whispered. I spent 800 years making sure I never felt that kind of pain again, he continued. I became powerful, untouchable. I never let anyone close enough to hurt me. And then I saw you. And I felt the bond beginning to form. And all I could think was that you would die. Eventually, humans always die. And I couldn't do it again, Elena. I couldn't watch another mate fade away. So I began the ritual to cut the bond. Before I could get too attached, before it could destroy me. The ritual was supposed to be clean, a severing that would make us both forget. But vampire-human bonds are so rare. The ancient texts had no warnings about what happens when you sever one that's already rooted in a human soul. I thought I was protecting us both. I had no idea I was planting a poison. But there was another choice, I said quietly. You could have approached me, explained everything, asked me to be turned. I would have been immortal. We could have had forever. His expression twisted with something that looked like shame. I could have, he admitted. But what if you'd said no? What if you'd been horrified by what I was, by what I was asking you to become? I'd only glimpsed you once, Elena. I didn't know you. And I was terrified that if I revealed myself, revealed the bond, you'd reject me. That you'd look at me the way my wife did, with fear and disgust. So I chose the coward's path. I cut the bond rather than risk your rejection. I condemned you to death because I was too afraid to ask you to live. The honesty of it hit me like a physical blow. At least he wasn't making excuses. But you did get attached anyway, I said softly. Didn't you? His hands clenched on the bench. I thought cutting the bond would make you disappear from my mind. Instead, you became an obsession. I learned everything about you. I attended events where you'd be, always staying far enough away to minimize your pain. I was frequently traveling those first years, but 6 months ago when I returned permanently to New Orleans, when Mira discovered what was happening, that I was slowly killing you, his voice broke. I would have done anything to fix it. Anything except force you into a bond you didn't choose. But you already did that, I said. 5 years ago. When you severed it without asking me. Yes, he said simply. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. But I need you to understand. Everything I did out of fear. Just cowardice. The burning in my chest was increasing as the suppressant wore off. What happens if I agree? I asked. To complete the bond? We perform the restoration ritual. It requires mutual consent, spoken freely. Then you drink from me, and I from you. The bond completes, and you're tied to me for life. You'd age slower, heal faster, potentially live for centuries. You'd feel my emotions and I'd feel yours. No hiding, no privacy of the soul. And you'd be marked as mine. Other vampires would know, which brings dangers. There are nobles who wanted political alliances, complications I've been willing to face since I realized what I'd done to you. And if I refuse? Then I stay away. You live out your remaining time. And I spend eternity knowing I killed the only mate I'll ever have because I was too much of a coward to simply ask you to choose me. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of river water and jasmine. I need time, I said finally. A few days to think. He nodded slowly. Then I'll wait. However you decide, Elena, thank you. For even considering a chance I don't deserve. Before he left, he turned back. For what it's worth, in 800 years, I've never met anyone who challenged me to be better than my fear. You do that just by existing. Bonded or not, you've already changed me. Then he was gone, and I sat alone, feeling my heart burn, wondering if healing was possible for wounds this deep. I spent the next few days researching mate bonds, reading ancient texts Mira provided. The successful bonds were between partners who chose each other freely. The disasters came from forced bonds or inequalities. But what did choice mean when the alternative was death? You're overthinking this, Jatin said. Do you want to live? Obviously. Then live. Figure out the rest later. But what kind of life? Tied to someone who hurt me? Or tied to someone who made a mistake out of fear and is trying desperately to make it right for centuries of experiences most people can't imagine? He sat beside me. I'm Team Elena, always. And Elena deserves a chance at an extraordinary life, even if it's complicated. He could have manipulated you into accepting him immediately, pain-free and unaware. But he didn't. He let you suffer, and himself, trying to find another way. Plus, you've been dreaming about Crimson Eyes for 5 years. Your soul has been reaching for him. That has to mean something. Maybe the bond is manipulating my subconscious. Or maybe it's truth. Your soul recognizing something your mind hasn't accepted yet. On day 5, I asked Mira to arrange one more meeting. This time in the gallery after hours, in front of the painting he'd been staring at, the one exploring the loneliness of immortality. I'd taken another dose of suppressant. This was my piece, I said. I curated it. Do you know why I chose it? Tell me. Because immortality without connection is just extended death. The artist was a 300-year-old vampire who'd never found his mate. He'd lived through empires, seen wonders, accumulated power. But every moment was hollow, because there was no one to share it with. Dracius studied the painting, abstract waves of darkness, punctuated by a single point of light forever out of reach. Is that why you were staring at it during the gala? Because you recognized yourself? Yes, he said quietly. I've spent 800 years being powerful and utterly alone. And the one time I had a chance at something real, I destroyed it out of fear. I took a breath. I want to tell you something. Something I haven't admitted even to myself. He turned to me, crimson eyes intense. Part of me wants this, I said. The bond, the connection, the chance at something extraordinary. And I hate that part because it feels like betraying my own pain. How can I want someone who hurt me? Elena, let me finish. I stepped closer, pushing through the pain. But maybe that's the point. Maybe real love isn't the easy, painless kind. Maybe it's choosing someone despite the hurt, despite the fear. Maybe it's saying you broke me, and I'm choosing to let you help put me back together. I don't deserve that, he whispered. Probably not, I agreed. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I don't want to die in 6 weeks full of spite. I want to live. I want to see what's possible. I want to know who I could become if I was brave enough to choose the harder path. His hand lifted, hovering near mine. Even that proximity was agony. Tomorrow night, I said, I'll meet you for the ritual. Elena, his voice was thick with emotion. I will spend every day of forever proving you made the right choice. Don't make promises yet, I said. Just be there, and be honest. That's all I need. The next evening, Mira drove me to a clearing in the bayou. The moon hung heavy and silver in the sky. Dracius was already there, dressed in black, his silver hair loose. A ritual circle had been prepared, candles and symbols humming with ancient magic. Last chance to change your mind, Mira said gently. I know. But I didn't turn back. I walked into the circle, and Dracius met me at the center. The ritual requires absolute honesty, Mira explained. You'll each make 3 statements, truth about the past, present, and future. The magic will know if you're lying. Then you complete the bond through blood exchange. She looked at me seriously. Elena, once this is done, it's permanent. Are you certain? I looked at Dracius, this ancient vampire king who'd been alone for 800 years, who'd made a terrible choice out of fear and cowardice, who'd spent 6 months trying to undo his mistake. I'm certain, I said. The magic activated, shimmering around us. Dracius took my hands, and even through the suppressant, the touch was electric. Truth of the past, he began. 5 years ago, I felt our bond forming and I was too cowardly to accept it. I was too afraid to approach you, to ask you to choose me, to risk your rejection. So I spent 3 days performing a ritual to cut you away, choosing loneliness over vulnerability. I thought it would be clean, that we'd both forget. I had no idea that severing a bond already rooted in a human soul would poison you. It was the worst decision of my existence, born from cowardice and fear. The magic pulsed, accepting his truth. Truth of the present. Every moment you've suffered has been my fault, and I carry that guilt like a physical weight. But beyond the guilt, Elena, I'm in awe of you. Your strength, your courage to even stand here with me. You humble me. Another pulse. Truth of the future. I don't know if you'll ever fully forgive me, but I will spend every day trying to earn it. I will protect you, cherish you, and never again let fear make my choices. You are my mate, Elena Moretti, and I will love you fiercely for as long as we both exist. The magic blazed bright. My turn. Truth of the past, I said, my voice shaking. For 5 years, I've been dying without knowing why. I was angry at my body, at doctors who couldn't help, at a universe that seemed determined to make me suffer. I never imagined the cause was a bond severed by someone I'd barely met. Someone who was too afraid to simply ask me to choose him. Who condemned me to death rather than risk hearing no. The magic accepted it. Truth of the present. I squeezed his hands. I'm terrified. Of this bond, of what it means, of losing myself. And I'm angry that my choice was stolen by your fear and cowardice. But I'm also hopeful, because some part of me has been reaching for you all along. And I want to know what we could be if we're both brave enough to try. The magic flared. Truth of the future. I took a shaky breath. I don't know if I'll ever stop being angry about what you did. I can't promise forever of perfect harmony, but I can promise I'll try. I'll try to forgive, try to trust, try to build something real. You broke me, Dracius Thorn, but I'm choosing to let you help put me back together. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve a chance at extraordinary. The magic exploded around us, blazing with silver light. Mira's voice rang out. The truths have been spoken and accepted. Complete the bond. Dracius lifted his wrist to his mouth, and his fangs extended. He bit down, and blood welled dark. He offered it to me. Drink, he said gently. Take my blood, my strength. Let it heal what I broke. I pressed my mouth to his wrist, and the taste was nothing like I expected. Not copper or death, but something rich and vital. Power flooded through me, warm and golden, chasing away the burning pain that had haunted me for 5 years. Then he lifted my wrist, pressing a kiss to my pulse before his fangs pierced my skin. The sensation was overwhelming. Not pain, but pleasure, connection, wholeness. I felt him in my blood, in my soul, in every cell. His emotions crashed into mine, desperate hope, overwhelming guilt, fierce protectiveness, and underneath it all, love so intense it took my breath away. The broken bond knitted itself together, mending, becoming whole. And the pain, the burning, agonizing pain that had defined 5 years, transformed into something else entirely. Warmth, light, the feeling of coming home after being lost in darkness. When Dracius pulled back, his eyes were glowing crimson. Elena, he whispered, I can feel you. Your fear, your hope. I know, I breathed. I feel you too. The guilt that consumed him, but also the wonder, the awe, the desperate hope that we might survive this together. The magic faded, leaving us in moonlight, hands clasped, newly bonded and forever changed. Mira approached, tears streaming. How do you feel? Like I can breathe for the first time in 5 years, I said. My chest felt light, open, free. No burning, no pain. Just this incredible sense of connection, of rightness, of 2 broken pieces finally fitting together. The bond didn't fix everything. Over the following weeks, I learned that healing was messy and required more than magic. The physical pain was gone, replaced by constant awareness of Dracius's presence, his emotions. But emotional pain required work. The first week after the bonding, Dracius stayed away. He gave me space to adjust to the new sensations flooding through the connection, the constant hum of his existence at the edge of my consciousness. But on the 8th day, I woke to find a package on my doorstep. Inside was a first edition of my favorite book, one I'd mentioned in passing to a coworker years ago at an event he'd attended. No note, just the book, and through the bond, a hesitant question mark of emotion, asking if it was too much, if he was overstepping. I texted him, "Thank you, it's perfect." The wave of relief that came back through the bond was almost overwhelming. The gifts continued. Never extravagant, never demanding. A coffee from my favorite shop left at the gallery's service entrance, on mornings when I had early meetings. Tickets to an art exhibit I'd wanted to see, with a note saying he'd arranged for the gallery to be private for an hour if I wanted to go alone. Or he'd stay away if I brought Jatin. A donation to the gallery in my name. Enough to fund the integration scholarship program I'd been trying to launch for years. Each gift came with the same emotional signature through the bond. Hope. Regret. A desperate desire to make things right without forcing his presence on me. It would have been easier to stay angry if he'd been pushy, if he'd demanded my time or attention. But instead, he gave me space. And somehow, that space made me curious about filling it. 2 weeks after the bonding, I asked him to meet me for coffee. Nothing formal, just coffee. He arrived early. I could feel his nervousness through the bond before I even entered the shop. When I walked in, he stood immediately, and I saw his hands shake slightly before he clasped them behind his back. "You came," he said, and there was such genuine surprise in his voice that something in my chest twisted. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought maybe you'd change your mind, decide you didn't want to see me after all." I sat down, and he followed, careful to leave space between us. "I'm still angry," I said. "I know, but I'm also curious." "About?" "About who you are. Not the vampire king, not the person who hurt me, just you." He's quiet for a moment. "I'm not sure I know how to be just me anymore." "Then figure it out," I said. "Because if we're going to make this work, I need to know the person I'm bonded to, not the mask you wear for everyone else." So we talked. For 3 hours, we sat in that coffee shop and talked about everything except the bond. He told me about his human life, growing up in a small village in England, learning to work with horses, meeting his wife at a harvest festival. His voice went soft when he spoke about her, and I felt the old grief through the bond, worn smooth by centuries but never quite gone. I told him about my childhood, about Jatin and our parents, about discovering art and falling in love with the way a single painting could tell 1,000 stories. About the loneliness of being good at something but never feeling quite good enough. When we finally left, the sun was setting. He walked me to my car, and before I got in, I turned to him. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," I said. "I know. But it means I'm willing to try to understand you." "That's more than I deserve," he said quietly. Through the bond, I felt his gratitude, his fragile hope, and underneath it, something that felt like the beginning of genuine happiness. We met for coffee again 3 days later, and then again, and again. Each time I learned something new. I learned that he'd spent decades in the 1500s as a patron of artists, that he could spend hours in museums just watching people react to paintings. I learned that he hated Shakespeare because he'd known the man personally and found him insufferable. I learned that he still had nightmares about his wife's death, even after 800 years, and that he'd never forgiven himself for not being strong enough to stay away from her after his turning. I learned that he was trying, genuinely trying, to be worthy of a second chance he knew he didn't deserve. And slowly, carefully, I let him learn me too. I told him about the pain, about what it had been like to live for 5 years, not understanding why my body was betraying me. I told him about the fear, the isolation, the way I'd started to believe I was broken. He listened, and I felt his anguish through the bond, felt the way each detail cut into him. Good, part of me thought, let it hurt. Let him understand what he did. But another part of me, a part growing stronger each day, wanted to soothe that pain, wanted to tell him it was okay, that I was healing, that we would get through this. We started therapy with a specialist who'd been studying bonds for decades. Dr. Chen was a stern woman, a vampire herself, who'd spent 3 centuries counseling bonded pairs. She didn't let Dracius hide behind pretty words or noble intentions. "The bond doesn't erase the harm," she told us in the first session. "It just gives you tools to rebuild. But rebuilding requires both of you to do the work. Are you prepared for that?" Dracius answered immediately, "Yes." She turned to me. "And you, Elena? Are you prepared to let him do that work? Or are you going to hold his feet to the fire forever?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to make him suffer." "That's natural," she said. "That's the hurt part of you wanting justice. But eventually you'll need to decide, do you want justice or do you want healing? Because sometimes you can't have both." The sessions were brutal. Dr. Chen made us talk about everything. The resentment I felt when I saw him getting to live the life I'd been robbed of for 5 years. The guilt he carried, so heavy it was almost crippling. The fear we both had that this bond would never feel like a choice, only an obligation. But slowly, something shifted. In our fourth session, Dr. Chen asked Dracius a question. If you could go back, knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently? He didn't hesitate. I would have approached her that first night. I would have told her what I felt, what was happening, and I would have given her the choice. To bond with me, to be turned, or to walk away. And I would have accepted whatever she chose. And if she'd walked away, Dr. Chen pressed? Then I would have spent the rest of my existence knowing I'd been brave enough to offer her a choice, he said quietly. That would have been enough. I felt tears on my cheeks before I realized I was crying. That's all I ever wanted, I whispered. Just the choice. I know, he said, and his voice broke. I know that now. And I will regret taking that from you for the rest of time. But Elena, if you'll let me, I want to spend that time giving you choices. Every day, in everything. Your life, your agency, your freedom. I never want you to feel trapped again. Something cracked open in my chest, something I'd been holding rigid and tight since the night of the bonding. It wasn't forgiveness, not quite, but it was the beginning of letting go. 3 months after bonding, Marcus hosted another gala. As Dracius's mate, I was expected to attend, to stand at his side while vampire lords assessed me. I was terrified. You don't have to do this, Dracius said as we prepared to leave. We can make excuses. I can go alone and tell everyone you're ill. No, I said, straightening my dress. I've spent 5 years running from you, from pain, from everything. I'm done with that. Are you sure? Because Elena, I need you to know, I'll never force you into any situation that makes you uncomfortable. If you want to leave after 5 minutes, we leave. If you want me to stay on the opposite side of the room all night, I will. Your comfort matters more than politics. I studied him, this vampire king who'd learned to put me first, who checked in constantly through the bond to make sure I was okay, who'd spent 3 months proving through actions, not just words, that he meant what he said. I'm sure, I said. But stay close. I think I'm ready for that. The gala was everything I feared, overwhelming, intense, full of powerful immortals who made me feel small. But Dracius never left my side. His hand stayed at the small of my back, a steady presence, and through the bond, he kept checking in. You okay? Need air? Want to leave? And when Lady Ashford made a subtle jab about human weakness, about how I must be quite the distraction for a king with so many responsibilities, he didn't just shut her down, he dismantled her. My mate, he said, his voice cold enough to frost the air, has more strength in her smallest finger than most vampires accumulate in centuries. She survived 5 years of suffering I caused through my own cowardice and fear. She chose to forgive me when she had every right to let me rot in guilt. She stands here tonight, in a room full of predators, with grace and courage that humbles me. And she does it while building a career, supporting her family, and somehow finding it in her heart to give me a chance at redemption I don't deserve. So when you speak about distraction, Lady Ashford, I'd remind you that the only thing distracting me is my constant awe at her resilience. And if you find that weakness, then I pity you, because you've clearly never experienced what it means to be genuinely strong. The room went silent. Lady Ashford looked like she'd been slapped. And through the bond, I felt it. Not pride in himself, pride in me. Joy at defending me. Love, fierce and protective and real. The pride I felt wasn't just from the bond. It was my own. Pride in myself, for being there, for not running, for standing tall in a room full of immortals and claiming my space. Later, as we danced under chandeliers that had witnessed centuries, Dracius pulled me close. Not possessively, but gently, leaving space for me to pull away if I wanted. I didn't want to. I felt it through the bond, he said quietly. your fear turning to confidence, your doubt becoming certainty. Elena, you were magnificent tonight. I was terrified, I admitted. You were both, he said. That's what made it magnificent. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the thing anyway. And in that moment, swaying to music as old as his existence, I felt something shift. The anger that had been my constant companion began to ease. Not disappearing. I'd never forget what happened, never pretend the harm didn't matter. But softening, making room for something else. Making room for feelings that were mine, not the Bond's. Dracius? Yes. I think I might be falling in love with you. Real love, not just Bond magic. He went very still, and through the Bond I felt his disbelief, his hope, his desperate fear that he'd misheard. His arms tightened around me, carefully, like I was something precious. Elena. I'm still angry sometimes, I continued. And I'll probably be angry for years, maybe decades. The Bond doesn't erase what you did. But underneath the anger, there's this tenderness. This wanting you to be happy. This caring about your pain almost as much as my own. This feeling of rightness when you smile. When you remember little things I've said. When you put my needs first, even when it costs you. Is that love? I don't know, he admitted, and his voice was rough with emotion. But it feels like grace. It feels like more than I could ever have hoped for. It feels like you're giving me a gift I haven't earned. Maybe you haven't earned it, I said, but I'm giving it anyway. Because I'm tired of letting your mistake define us. I want to see what we could be if we both choose this, actively, every day. Through the Bond, I felt him crying, tears he didn't let fall. I felt his love, overwhelming and fierce and desperate. And I felt my own heart responding, opening, letting him in. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. 4 months after bonding, I woke up one morning to find Dracius sitting at my kitchen table, looking exhausted. He'd been traveling for political duties, and he wasn't supposed to be back for another week. What's wrong? I asked, immediately alert. He looked up at me, and through the Bond, I felt it. Anguish. I was in Prague, he said quietly, meeting with the European Council, and they asked me to stay for another month to help negotiate a treaty. It would have been smart politically, the right move for my territory. And I couldn't do it, because being away from you for a week was already driving me insane, and the thought of another month felt unbearable. So I told them no. I came home, to you. Because you matter more than politics, more than strategy, more than anything. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm probably a terrible king, but I'm trying to be a better mate. Something warm bloomed in my chest. You flew home from Prague because you missed me? I couldn't stay away, he admitted. I know it's probably too much, too intense, and if you need space I can go to a hotel, but I needed to be near you. I walked over and took his hand, pulling him to his feet. Come to bed, I said. You look exhausted. Elena, I don't want to presume. I'm not asking you to presume, I said gently. I'm asking you to sleep. Here, with me. Because I missed you too, and the Bond feels better when you're close. The look on his face was worth everything. The months of pain, the work of healing, all of it. Because I saw him vulnerable in a way he'd never been before, hopeful, open, real. We went to bed, and he held me carefully, like I might break. But as I drifted off, I felt his exhaustion through the Bond, and underneath it, contentment, peace. The feeling of being exactly where he wanted to be. 6 months after bonding, Jatin got married. It was a small ceremony. His fiancée was human, wonderfully normal, refreshingly uninterested in vampire politics. As I stood beside my brother during the reception, watching him dance with his new wife, I felt a pang of something complicated. Jealous, Dracius asked, appearing at my side with champagne. He'd stayed back during the ceremony, giving me space with my family, only joining for the reception because Jatin had specifically invited him. Not exactly, just wistful. They get to have the normal thing. The simple love story. Meet, date, fall in love, get married. No supernatural drama, no death sentences, no complicated healing. Would you trade? He asked quietly. If you could go back, knowing everything, would you choose normal instead? I considered it, really considered it. A normal life, a normal death, no pain, no complications. Meeting someone nice, dating, falling in love without the intensity of a mate bond. Growing old together in a simple, uncomplicated way. No, I said finally, I wouldn't trade. Even with everything we've been through, even with the pain and anger and difficulty, I wouldn't trade you. This, us. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. Why not? Because normal is safe, but it's not extraordinary. And you, Dracius, Thorn, for all your dramatic idiocy and terrible life choices, are extraordinary. You've given me a life I never imagined, a love I didn't think existed, a chance to be something more than I was. I looked at him, this ancient vampire who'd become my home. And yeah, you almost killed me to get here. And yeah, I'm probably going to bring that up in arguments for the next century. But I wouldn't trade it. Because the love we have, the one we built from ruins, that's real. That's earned. That matters. Through the bond, I felt his emotions crash over me. Gratitude, awe, love so overwhelming it made my breath catch. I love you, he said. I don't say it enough, but I love you. Everything you are, everything you've made me become. I'm a better person because of you, Elena. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 800 years. I love you too, I said. Even though you're a dramatic idiot who made the worst decision in vampire history. He laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and joyful. Fair assessment, but I'm your dramatic idiot, and I wouldn't have it any other way. 1 year after bonding, I woke up without pain. It sounds simple, but it wasn't. For so long, pain had been my companion. First, the burning of the broken bond, then the ache of betrayal, then the work of healing. Even emotional pain had been a constant weight on my chest. But this morning, I woke up in Dracius's arms in his ridiculous mansion. I'd started staying over more often, practically living there now. And I felt peaceful, light, free. You're smiling, he murmured, still half asleep. I'm happy, I realized. Actually genuinely happy. Is that allowed? After everything we've been through, I'd say you've earned it. I traced the line of his jaw, this ancient vampire who'd become my home. I forgive you, I said quietly, for what you did. I know I've said I'm working on it, that I'm trying, but I actually forgive you now. Completely. He went very still, his crimson eyes opening, focusing on me with an intensity that would have frightened me a year ago. Now, it just made me feel seen. Elena, it doesn't mean I've forgotten, I said, and it doesn't mean it didn't hurt, but I forgive you. Because holding on to that anger was only hurting me, and I want to move forward, not stay trapped in the past. I want to build a future with you, not live in the ruins of what you destroyed. He pulled me close, and through the bond, I felt his emotion. Relief so intense it was almost painful. Gratitude that made him shake. Love so fierce it made my chest tight in the best way. I love you, he said, his voice breaking. I don't say it enough. I should say it every hour of every day for the rest of our lives, and it still wouldn't be enough. Everything you are, everything you've made me become, Elena. You saved me. Not from death, but from the half-life I was living. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 800 years. I love you too, I said. Even though you're a dramatic idiot who made the worst decision in vampire history. He laughed through his tears. Fair assessment, but I'm your dramatic idiot, and I wouldn't have it any other way. We lay there for a while, wrapped in each other, the bond singing between us with contentment and peace and love. Real love. The kind that's chosen and earned and built from the ground up. And I thought about everything we'd been through, the pain, the anger, the slow, difficult work of healing, the moments of tenderness that had surprised us both, the way he'd learned to put me first, and the way I'd learned to let him in. It wasn't perfect. We still fought sometimes. I still had moments where the old hurt resurfaced, where I needed space to process the weight of what had happened. He still carried guilt that no amount of reassurance could fully erase. But we were real. We were choosing each other, and that mattered more than anything else. They say love is supposed to feel like coming home, and they're right. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes home has to be built from ruins. Sometimes coming home means choosing to forgive the unforgivable. Sometimes it means accepting that the person who hurt you is also the person who can heal you, if you're both brave enough to try. My name is Elena Moretti Thorne, and I'm alive because of a bond I never asked for, with a man who almost destroyed me. But I'm not just alive, I'm living. Really living. Building a life that's complicated and extraordinary. Working at the gallery I love. Standing beside a vampire king as his partner, not his possession. Learning to navigate a world where I'm no longer entirely human, but not quite vampire either. Something new, something in between. The pain is gone. The burning that defined 5 years has been replaced by warmth, the constant awareness of Dracius's presence, his love. It's not always easy. We fight. We struggle. We're still learning how to be together when we come from such different worlds. But we choose each other. Every day, we choose each other. And that, I've learned, is what real love is. Not the absence of pain, but the decision to work through it together. Not perfection, but the commitment to grow. Not fate forcing your hand, but choosing to accept what fate offers and making it your own. The mate bond gave us a beginning, but everything after, the healing, the forgiveness, the love, that was our choice. And I would choose it again. I would choose him again. I would choose this extraordinary, complicated, beautiful life again and again. Because sometimes, the most painful truth leads to the most profound healing. And sometimes, coming home means accepting that you're strong enough to rebuild, brave enough to forgive, and worthy enough to be loved, even when the journey there nearly killed you. This was our story, the painful truth of forever, and I wouldn't change a single moment.